There is a stigma around sex and sexuality in general, and especially for women. There's so many limitations. We even have censorship on the word vagina. A woman should be as comfortable with her hand as she is with her vulva and vagina. Get rid of the goal of orgasm. Make the goal just being in your body and feeling the pleasure, whatever pleasure it is. That's it.
Welcome to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast for midlife women who are ready to rewrite the rules and create their kick-ass next chapter. I'm Jennifer Arthurton, and each episode we dive into reinvention, resilience, and unapologetic pursuit of your best chapter yet. Because midlife is not the beginning of the end, it's simply a new beginning. Let's dive in. Today we are going to be talking about intimate pleasure and sex. Yes, we're going there. We're going to go deep on sex and pleasure. I wanted to have this conversation today because I feel like this is a very, very not talked about enough within the midlife community. When we enter midlife, so much is changing, like inside us and around us, like kids leaving, life stresses, relationships changing, not to mention the big M and the hormones and, the bodies that we once knew are maybe not the same as they used to be. And that can leave us feeling like really disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, and ultimately from our sex lives, from our own pleasure. So today we are going to go in and unpack all of that with my guest, who is Janet Williams, a board-certified OBGYN and surgeon, who is also the author of a book called Why I Don't Like Sex Anymore, which is... yeah. Anyway, we're going to unpack that. But also, she is an intimate coach, which we'll get into that, and a hypnotist. So I'm super fascinated about the connection between hypnosis and pleasure. So welcome, Janet.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about why, obviously you're an OBGYN, but what led you specifically to this work of, pleasure for women specifically in midlife, like women over 40?
Well, I think the biggest reason was just noticing a trend. As I was trained in my residency program, we didn't really get a whole lot of information or training at all on sexual function and sex. So despite the fact that most gynecologists know everything there is to know about surgery and bleeding and hormones, when it comes to sex, I just didn't have any information on it. And that's like a huge part of what, people come to see their gynecologist for, really, And I was finding in my early part of my career that people would ask me, questions about libido, things are changing, and I didn't really have any good answers for them. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of the beginning point of it. And even when I talked to my colleagues, the colleagues didn't really have any good answers for me, the seasoned colleagues that had been there for, years and years before me. And so I started to do some of this work on the side to try to figure out, what to do and how to help people. And then I had some of my own challenges in my early 40s. I went through some fertility treatment, which was unfortunately not successful. And after the fertility treatment, I just had such a drop in my desire, my libido, and was in a really bad space. And it's there that I started doing some of a little bit more aggressive work for myself. And found some solutions that were inside of medicine as well as outside of medicine that were very helpful for me.
I love that you approached it from the medical standpoint, obviously, because that's your training. But I love that you started looking outside of that, because I feel like sometimes, and I've had this experience with my own OBGYN, who was a male at that time. I now have a female one. But it was kind of like, okay, first of all, like you said, limited information. And if it wasn't this, then, well, sorry, there's no help for you.
Right.
And that was kind of like, wow, it felt very dismissive. Mm-hmm. Shall we put it that way, right?
Yeah.
And that, okay, well, I guess this is just the way things are. And, your work basically is showing people that, wait a minute, this is not how it has to be. And you do not need to resign yourself to the fact that, okay, I guess my sex life is over.
Right. Well, and I remember feeling that way, like not having the answers for my patients, and I would acknowledge, I would say, hey, I realize that you're having a problem, but I don't know what the answer is for you. So I think there's something in just acknowledging that I think a lot of gynecologists that if you don't know, it's okay that we don't know, but it's just sort of making that acknowledgement for our patients and clients. But now there's a lot more research that's gone into this area. There's a lot more information that really shouldn't be an issue anymore. So
yeah. So what? So as you were like, okay, I can't find the medical solution for this. Like, how did you begin to explore outside of the medical system? Like, where did you start first, and what led you there?
Well, I've always been a sort of broad thinker, so I realize there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak.
Right.
Even within like medicine, there's some people who have a straight mind of thinking this is the only way to do it. But I realize that every body is different, every person is different. So and I've seen it within my clients and patients that some treatments work for some people, some treatments don't work for people, and some of it has to do with our environment. And it has to do with, the way that we're raised, the support that we have at home. I've, definitely seen that in surgery, for example. Certain people heal better than other depending on the support systems that they have at home. So there is this concept called the biopsychosocial model of sexual function. That is pretty well established, and that basically looks at like all the areas that are involved with sexual function. So there's biology that's involved, there's psychology that's involved, and then there's our social cultural areas that are also involved. So when we look at even from a purely scientific standpoint of using that model, it does incorporate everything into it. So like,
Right.
your mindset is involved. There's studies about how women's body image plays a role in our desire and our sexual function. So I started there, just from the standpoint of being stressed, and being able to utilize some of the mind-body techniques to improve your overall health and wellness. So, I realized that like our body, no system in our body is in isolation. There's
Right.
not, one part of your arm is connected to your brain. So your brain is a part of your arm is a part of your nervous system. And so I had that like realization that a lot of times we in medicine somehow segmented it out and it just makes no sense, And
Yeah.
so your approach to health really just is an approach to your life, like your overall wellness. So that's where I started.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense because we are bodies and minds, and you can't separate them, right?
Right, exactly.
So let's unpack each one of those a little bit because, I mean, obviously the place where most of us start. So, we get into perimenopause, menopause, things are definitely changing. I mean, I know I definitely went to the place where I'm like, if you even look at me sideways, I'm going to run away. I want nothing to do with this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first step, obviously, is to go and, what I did was like, go to my doctor and be like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. Like, is this just going to be the rest of my life? And I think so. The first line of defense often is hormone replacement therapy. Am I right?
It is. It depends on what you're experiencing, though. So that's one of the tools in the armamentarium, so to speak. But
Yeah.
it really depends on what you're experiencing because not everyone, again, there's no one size fits all. So it depends on what you're experiencing. Some people come in, they have hot flashes. That would be something to be addressed with hormones. But some people come in and they've got difficulty sleeping. And so we've got to figure out why there's difficulty sleeping. Sometimes that is because of hot flashes. But, so it really depends. There's no one size fits all for everything.
So if anybody listening here is like, okay, I probably need to address this. So first of all, I think we tend to let it go a lot longer than we actually should before we address it. Do you find that with your, because it's not sometimes,
for sure.
not comfortable necessarily talk about with your doctor or even necessarily with your friends.
Right. So yeah, definitely. It's like there is a stigma around sex and sexuality in general, and especially for women. Patriarchy is a thing. And so anytime it comes to a woman's sexual function, there's so many limitations. We even have censorship on the word vagina. Like you can't. There's so many things that culturally we're just not there yet. And I think that I will say this, that like a woman should be as comfortable with her hand as she is with her vulva and vagina. Like being that comfortable is where we need to get to, Yeah. So I just kind of want to dip back to your question initially. Like you had mentioned that you went to your doctor. So what did you go to your doctor and say?
So basically it was, during my perimenopause, and I mean, I got hit by it was like a 2x4 to the head for me, where I had the hot flashes, heart palpitations, wasn't sleeping, like crazy insomnia, vaginal dryness, like, irritation, like all the things. Right. And, the first thing he said to me was, oh, okay, well, we just need to get you on some hormone therapy, which for me was a very bumpy ride, shall we say. It wasn't the panacea that I was expecting it to be, and it didn't solve all my problems at all, right? In fact, it solved some of them, sort of. But to what you just mentioned, like everybody is different and everybody responds differently.
Right.
But what I was going to say, so I told him, and then at the very kind of end of my like little diatribe to him, I was like, oh, and I have no interest in sex. And then that was like the thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which felt really uncomfortable, first of all, even saying to a man.
Right. Well, just for informational purpose, I'll just kind of put it out here just so that people have an understanding of what happens in perimenopause and menopause. Yeah. Just a quick little thing.
Yeah.
In perimenopause, the hormones in your body are fluctuating like cuckoo bananas, right? And so that's where we'll see a lot of changes in menstrual cycles. So sometimes people will have heavy periods. Sometimes the periods are non-existent, light, and they disappear. And that's really related mostly to the hormone estrogen. And so estrogen fluctuations, when you have the estrogen levels that are low, it can lead to hot flashes. Estrogen is important in how our brain regulates our temperature, and it helps to tell us, you're hot, you're not hot, and if it's telling us that we're hot and we're, even though the temperature is the same, our body is going to adjust to help to cool itself off. And that's why you get those hot flashes that are occurring. And so, the palpitations that you have are actually a part of the hot flash. So you're having palpitations because your body is increasing the heart rate to help you to get the blood flowing so that you can sweat, basically. And so all of this is kind of tied together. Now, you can see some secondary effects. So if you're having these hot flashes that are waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is a time when some of the levels are different. And so you get lots of people wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, and they may not even feel the hot flash at first, but then that hot flash kicks in, and then you can't go the hell back to sleep, So
right.
Then now your sleep is interrupted, right? So now you're not getting good sleep. Then you're feeling fatigue. Fatigue is going to make you irritated as hell, right? So you're not going to want to deal with or touch anyone, right? Then the estrogen levels are also low that lead to important moisture in the vagina. Moisture in the vagina leads to good lubrication, which is a part of the arousal process. So if you have low estrogen, low lubrication in the vagina, you have sex, it's painful. Now you've got a feedback in your brain where okay, no, I don't want to have sex because it hurts. Who wants to have sex when it hurts? So that can have an effect on your desire and libido. So all of these things are all tied into each other. So if we can figure out where the issue is, we can sometimes, yes, the hormone replacement would be helpful, but there may be a different part or piece that we need to address as well.
Yeah, and and that's why I really want to get to the psycho and social elements of this as well too, because these are the two parts I think that are not talked about enough, because there's a lot of conversation around hormone therapy and the biological impacts. But let's unpack kind of the psychosocial elements and how those are impacting it. So we're in this place where, like, kids are leaving home, maybe careers are changing, maybe the relationship with our spouse is very different than it used to be. Like, how do we navigate all of that to get back to this place of, intimacy and pleasure?
Yeah. Well, what I see for a lot of my clients and patients is that, this time, like you're saying, this is a time where, kids are going out to college for a lot of us. It's a lot of transition happening. So there needs to be a little bit more attention to that, the idea of change, and change can be difficult. Change is not necessarily, even if it's a good change, it's change, and it is a stress on our systems. And then the other piece that I like to mention is that for a lot of women, they're so invested in their children, they're so invested in their families, they're so invested in things external to them, and that's for many reasons. So again, we get back to the patriarchy kind of thing, where it's like that's what a woman's job is to care for everybody but themselves. Yeah. And so when we have these moments where we need to really turn to ourselves, we're not even sure of how to do that a lot of times, and how to care for ourselves a lot of times. And so there's this angst that can occur when all of these things are in flux. Yeah. So
it's interesting because I find a lot of the women that end up in my community as well too is we're so disconnected from ourselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally, because we're so busy doing everything for everybody, taking care, making sure everything is okay, and then all of a sudden, the demands on you maybe are less. Like your kids have gone now, maybe your career's on autopilot. And you turn to yourself and you realize, I don't even know who I am. That was so true for me. I'm I have no idea who I am. I have no idea what's important to me, because honestly, I haven't thought about it in 30 years.
Yeah, no, you've been invested in people that you care about. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a tough. I've got clients who, when I turn the question on, what do you want? A lot of people don't know what they want.
So true.
And we have to learn. We have to learn that, because it's inside of us. It's there. It exists. We're born with it. It's something that I call our divine ember. We all have that sensual connection. It's our God-given right, is what I believe, and it lives inside of us. It's just a matter of finding it and bringing it out. We all have it.
Yeah, because I think too, the things that you used to, especially maybe, over time sex becomes a bit rote with your partner. There's a certain way of things just play out that way. And then everything changes. Your body is not the same. And now what used to work for you no longer works for you. And now you're kind of left floundering to figure out that, okay, what is this new body? And how do I navigate what actually works for me, in that department?
Yeah. And then so a lot of what happens with, long-term partnerships is novelty is needed, so we need something new. We need new ways to kind of reinvent those monogamous relationships. And that sometimes there's some limitations in what our mindset is and what we believe to be shameful and not shameful, and what is a menopausal woman, what does it mean to be a menopausal woman, right? So there's a lot of shame around our age, which is crazy, because my mom used to always say, and she's still living, but she always used to say in the past, every birthday is a blessing, if your alternative is not a good one. So we have to figure out ways to reframe that and understand that aging is not necessarily a bad thing. We think about ourselves as an older woman, there should be pride in that. And that's something that a lot of us have to relearn, and retrain the way our mind thinks about that.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up shame because, and you mentioned this kind of in the beginning of your book, where the messaging, like the cultural messaging about sex to women is, we have to look a certain way, we have to show up a certain way, we must always, want to have sex with our partner, we must always be completely enamored with our partner, when the reality is life gets in the way. And then we get to this place where, it's like, okay, I really don't even want to think about sex. I definitely don't want to do it. And then there's a shame associated with the fact that, I'm not, it's difficult for us to say that to our partners, right? Mm-hmm. Or I'm not fulfilling my duty as a woman, which really, in all honesty, it's the messaging is ridiculous, but that is what we absorb, consciously and unconsciously. Consciously, we might reject it, but subconsciously, it's like those seeds are in there and we can't help it. So how do you counsel your clients then to start kind of finding that novelty or figuring out what's different and what works for them? What is the process, or do you have a process that you take people through to help them in that discovery?
Okay, yeah, so definitely there's a process. So I start with a kind of evaluation, basically to kind of see where the client is. So we kind of see what area of sexual function they have what I call intimacy congestion in. And so there's a number of questionnaires and things that we go through. I get a pleasure function history. So we kind of go back and kind of see where things started. And then we also see where you are. And then that's how we kind of target what we need to sort of work on, right? And so everyone has, most people have a physical and emotional component to their issues. And so we look at what those physical components are, and I work with them to let them know what options might be available so that they can go talk to their provider. Because as a coach and hypnosis professional, I don't actually function as a gynecologist for those clients. Okay. I work separately with patients, and then I have coaching and hypnosis clients. And so with the coaching and hypnosis clients, I will, work through any medical issues so they have an understanding of what the medical side of it is, and they can, communicate really well with their providers to, deal with that side of it. And then we get into the mental side of things, and we can do hypnosis to break habits that are getting in the way of their physical pleasure. Sometimes people have, issues with pain or previous trauma that are getting in the way, that are now surfacing, that have just kind of been in the back burner. But those things are kind of coming up now, and so we can work through those things. Pelvic floor tension, we can work on relaxation, stress management. There's just pretty much anything that you are dealing with on a subconscious level, we can work through that to kind of release and clear those areas of intimacy congestion. And it's really amazing what can happen in just a few sessions to kind of clear those blocks up and open up the portal, so to speak, for pleasure. And okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, finish your sentence.
Yeah. So I was also going to say that, a big part of it is learning how to own your own pleasure. So finding out exactly what pleases you. Like you were saying, there's some things you have your go-tos, right? So there's a couple things, I know when I do this is going to be the outcome. But there's actually, for most women, more options. There's more options than the one or two things that you were doing with your partner. And sometimes we rely so heavily on our partner to do the one move that he does. But when we get rid of that shame, when we get rid of the shame and then come into an understanding of what's going on in our bodies, and there's a shift that I see happen with my clients when they get to a point where they accept and love, not only accept, but truly love their bodies and say, it just turns something on inside, and then you're able to tap into that divine ember that lives inside of all of us. And it's pretty incredible.
I love that you just brought this up, because I think like body image affects pretty much every aspect of our life. And I actually just did an episode on body image a couple weeks ago that was just released. So the link between, obviously our pleasure and our bodies is like when we are like, I guess, becoming like overly conscious of our body. Okay, it's changing. It doesn't look like the way that it used to. Wrinkles, maybe I've gained a few pounds. Things are sagging, like whatever that looks like, right? And we're in our heads. Is that really the thing? Like we're in our heads about our bodies, or maybe we're in our heads about, vaginal dryness, for example. Oh, is this going to hurt? But we're actually just not present, right? Because we're somewhere else in our body, hoping everything is going to be okay.
Yeah.
So this idea that we can learn to love our bodies in spite of, because I hear this a lot where women are saying, I feel like my body's kind of betraying me in a way, right? That we can learn to love our bodies through all of these changes really, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, opens the door for us to be able to explore differently, think different things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is just a mindset to think that, your body is failing you. Like when I think about it, it's nuts, because your body it has you here. Like you're here, right? Yeah. My body is not, even if it's struggling in some area, it might be struggling in some areas. But some of that is like the environment I'm in that has nothing to do with me and my body, right? So, or maybe I actually didn't give my body what it needed, and that's why it's struggling. Maybe I'm putting the wrong stuff in there because I have this negative relationship with my body. You're at odds with your body. You're like, my body has betrayed me, but what you're saying is like, I have betrayed me because your body is you. We are one, right? So there is something in your subconscious mind. There's something in your programming, and a lot of it happens when we're really young, from age 1 to 7, where we have this programming, be it from our parents, be it from our upbringing, whatever our upbringing is, that tells us, when this happens, your body is betraying you. And a part of what hypnosis can do is like reset that mindset where we're thinking that my body has never betrayed me. It's like, I'm still here. It's digesting my food for me every day. Like you don't have to think about the digestion of your food. You just eat your food and it gets done, right? Yeah. So when we get that shift in our mind, that it turns something on, and you come to a point where you love your body, and it's like, ride or die, this is my bitch right now. Like, this is my girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are going to, wrinkles and all, like those wrinkles represent my wisdom. Those wrinkles represent carrying a child, or whatever it is for you. Like, there is something that can change in your mind. I'm getting chills when I think about it, because it's like, like when you have that, it's very empowering, because then you say to your body, it's like a communication. The same way that you love and care for your children, you can have that same love and care for yourself, where you're saying like, listen, we're going to get through these hot flashes, and we're going to work it out. We're going to do the things. We're going to change the habits so that meaning I, can feel better and have pleasure. And you're going to want to do those things for yourself. So it's breaking that like toxic relationship that you have with yourself, and negative thinking that you have around yourself, and turns it like 180 to love for yourself. And it's really a powerful thing that we all can do.
It is. And I talk about this all the time on this podcast. We have been taught as women that our value lies in, what we do for other people. Is our body physically pleasing to somebody outside of us, and our ability to have babies? And then all of a sudden, when we get to this place of midlife where, okay, you know what, we can't have babies anymore, our body's changing, and, maybe our kids have gone off, and all of a sudden we start questioning our value. right? Like it's so like the messaging is so messed up,
It's
and
backwards. Yeah.
this time of our lives is not about what we look like, or or our ability to have kids. It's about who we are on the inside, and seeing like the gifts, like all of that knowledge and wisdom and life experience has given us tremendous gifts, and our focus now is about how are we going to choose to use those gifts.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then, but if we're busy, being focused on our bodies and what our bodies are no longer or what we've lost, we're missing the point of all of this gift. Like we're missing the gift that's being handed to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to your point, I mean, if we can find ways to be grateful, and I'm a huge proponent of gratitude, for our bodies and everything that it's done for us. Like I think about this all the time that, I'm 57 years old, and for 57 years, my body every day has gone through thousands of processes,
Yes.
right? Like things I couldn't even think about all happening, and that I wake up every day and that I have the ability to move and function. Like it is a true miracle.
It absolutely is.
And, I am not like, unlike other women who have had issues with their bodies, but when I flipped the script on that one and started thinking about all of the things, like it totally changed my relationship with my body.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Yeah. That's it right there. That is the key.
Yeah.
And then you're able to fuel it. You know what I mean? You're able to really like get behind it and be loving towards yourself, where, I'm having a bad day. Like today's a bad day. My hair is effed up, you know what I mean? Whatever it is,
right?
But it's like it's okay. Like we're gonna get up, and we're gonna keep moving forward, and we're gonna do what we can do. And the other thing that does is it helps to bring you into your body, like to physically and listen to your body, because our bodies, they tell us stuff, man.
Amen.
They tell us stuff. I had a client who she was losing a patch of hair right here, and she was in a partnership with her husband, but taking care of kids, moving fast, working mom, busy lady, patch of hair just gone, no explanation for it. She found out later that there was infidelity going on in the relationship, and it's like our body. We know there's signs that she wasn't consciously aware of, but subconsciously and unconsciously, her body was like, I'm stressed the hell out. You know what I mean? And that little patch of hair was her sign. But she was not like wasn't in tune with her body, trying to tell her all of the things it was trying to tell her. And so a part of how we're able to, like, sometimes we lose our orgasm, and part of that is like, part of that is biological, if there's some, nerve issues or something like that. But part of it is our mind is racing, like we're over here with a to-do list, and we're not here in the body, and so it is like crucial that we are able to make that connection and get back into ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I'm the one with the goosebumps as you're talking about this, because it's like presence is everything. It literally is everything. And I think, being present enough in our body and being grateful for it, I think probably one of the best things that we could do for our intimate lives, for our own pleasure, is to love on our bodies. And I've come through when I was 50, I found myself divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and bedridden with a stress-related illness. And I knew at that point that if my life was not working for me, and if I wanted my life to be different, I had to show up differently in it. So I started from the ground and started working my way up. And one of the things that I recognized was self-love. Like I was so disconnected from myself that I didn't know who I was, and my only relationship with my body was to beat it into some kind of shape or form that I wanted it to look like. Right? Like I had, it was like my body was the stick that carried around my head. Like basically that's what it was, right? And I would try and manipulate it into some shape or form. Right. And recognizing that that was coming from a place of not enoughness, right? Mm-hmm. And having to work my way back through the whole process and unpack that and get into the place of self-love, like that truly, I think, changed so much for me. And it's still a work in progress, people. I think it's, for the rest of your life, it's a work in progress. Right. But bringing that presence and that gratitude to my body and learning to love myself, I think has probably been the biggest thing that has impacted my own pleasure, for sure.
Yeah. And it's so funny because people are always like, oh, you've got to love yourself before you can, put on your oxygen mask. But like a lot of us don't really like understand what that means. And sometimes it takes like, that breaking point where you're at your lowest to kind of realize what that what it actually means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That because is so true.
We'll jump on the Peloton or go to a cardio step course and go hardcore, and even then we may not even really be in our bodies. We're just like, it's a more kind of slower, intuitive, just presence that you have to have to kind of make that switch for yourself.
Yeah. I want to also dig down on something that you just mentioned about orgasm and orgasm changing. Obviously, there's a biological component to that. But is there, how do we, because I hear this a lot, it's like, it's just not the same as it used to be, right? And we kind of resign ourselves to that fact, and that makes it not as much fun or whatever. Like, is that like how? Let me rephrase this question. I'm getting ahead of myself. Is that something that we just have to accept because it's a biological change of aging, or are there ways that we can get that back, so to speak?
I think that is a yes and a no. So sometimes there is some change that we can't necessarily reverse, but there's things that you can do to improve it, right? So first of all, I like for people to get rid of the goal of orgasm.
Right.
Because when we set the goal, it's sort of like it makes it harder to get to the goal.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get to this goal. So I like for people to make the goal just being in your body and feeling the pleasure, whatever pleasure it is. That's it. That's your goal, is to feel the pleasure. And even in your, like if I were to rub my hand, thinking about like the pleasure of me rubbing my arm, how does it feel good? Staying in the body. That's the thing that will lead to more pleasure, right? So that's kind of one of the first steps there. And then there's some, biological things, supplements, and making sure you're doing or not doing certain things that can be helpful from the biological standpoint. Blood flow to the area is important. And even some like meditation type, again, mind body, where you're focusing some energy, helping the blood flow, things in your diet and making sure that you're getting enough hydration. All of those things help with the arousal process, and that arousal process is how our body responds to desire and sexual stimulation. So it's a balance, and sometimes we need some toys and tools, like you get a vibrator. There's different ones that stimulate the clitoris specifically in certain ways. They've done research on them that help with that. Sometimes you need a more powerful motor on the vibrator to help, with the nervous tissue that's not as receptive as it once was before. So all of those things are things to consider and help with that loss of orgasm. Then there's some, stimulating type things. So there's not hard research on this, but like CBD oil, there's certain serums that may help to increase the blood flow to the area. So those may be helpful for menopausal and perimenopausal women who have that issue.
Right. So I think a lot of what you just said is like exercise, diet, like overall health, first and foremost. And then on top of that, presence, mindfulness, maybe adding in different tools and techniques those types of things. But I think it's a process of not being afraid to experiment, I think is what I hear you saying.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, we get into these ruts like you had mentioned before, where we're like, this is my thing, this is how we do it. We switch this and then we go over here and we do that, but it changed. Our bodies are dynamic; they're not static, and so we've got to change it up.
Yeah. And you also talk, I think, about visualization as well, too, as being kind of can you talk a little bit about that, like visualizing, your perfect sexual experience or whatever it is, and like how that works to bring us into it?
Right. So if you think about when you're dreaming, right? You're asleep, you're in a dream. It's real, right? Like it's an actual moment that you're having in it. And of course, when we're asleep, our bodies don't, move. But we have like some things that we're working in a different part of our brain. But if we're using our brain to visualize in a dream, the same thing can be done. And daydreaming is basically a state of hypnosis, right? So we're working in our subconscious mind when we're in a daydream. Have you ever gotten in a car and suddenly you're at your destination?
All the time.
Yeah. So you're in a state of hypnosis when that's happening.
Right.
Right? And so the state of hypnosis you're in is the subconscious mind. And so again, the subconscious mind is where we need to make all of these changes to our thinking. And so if we can get into a state of mind where we're imagining our dream scenario and the juices are flowing, that can apply to your here and now.
Right.
So that's like a powerful tool that's right here. You don't have to go anywhere. It's not dangerous. You're not going to get an STD,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm an advocate of that.
Yeah, it's, I talk about visualization all the time because it's been such a huge thing in my own life, like basically having to reinvent myself and my life and kind of visualizing what I want. And I do it. It's a daily practice for me. But I actually hadn't thought about applying it to my sex life. Which is so weird. I'm like, why would I do it for everything else in my life. Why did I forget that part? Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's right. Because, in the studies that I've read, like your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined.
Nope. Sure doesn't.
Right. And your body will respond to whatever it is, whether it's a real scenario or not. So, hey, why not? But that's interesting.
Well,
I hadn't actually thought about that.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, when we visualize, it sort of changes our own chemistry, right? And this is what I see with my clients. It's like when we do some work and they use the visualization techniques, we use some meditation, they start interacting in the world differently. And so there's a certain there's an attraction that happens where they start calling in and start pulling in the things that they actually want to see in their lives. And so it's really amazing and powerful what we've got going on right here.
Yeah. Know? It's a completely underutilized, like our brains are so completely underutilized. Like we're using a tiny fraction of it every day, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And being able to apply it to these scenarios of your life. And I truly believe I 100% believe that when you visualize, you attract things that you wouldn't had you not visualized. I truly 100% believe that.
Right. I agree. And then the thing is, it's sort of, again, like when you have the appreciation for your body, right? So it's like you visualize these things and then there's that switch that happens. It often will lead you to the actions that you need to take in order to, create these things in your life that you want. So it's very cool.
Yeah. So the book that you wrote, Why I Don't Like Sex Anymore, who specifically did you write that book for? Was it kind of any woman experiencing sexual dysfunction?
I wrote it for myself, and I wrote it for the women that I saw as patients that were asking me that question on a regular basis. Yeah. So, and for their partners and helping them, understand what's going on with their bodies and find tools and ways to get back to a better place in terms of pleasure.
Yeah, I love that your book can really open up a conversation because, again, it can be difficult to explain to our partners that, like, here's what my body's going through. It's impacting me in all of these different ways. And right now, I love you, but I'm really not interested, right? Like, to be able to open up that conversation, which, again, is not easy when we've had this programming, instilled in us from, childhood, that we need to be, there and ready to go at the drop of a hat. And there's something wrong with us if we're not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I recently created a program that the partners can be a part of. It's called the Sex Compatibility Reboot. So I use that for clients who have gone through one of my programs with me, and then they sort of want a little help with, talking and navigating with their partner. So that's something that I recently created. So
cool.
It's needed, And then in that, I also talk about things like ED, like erectile dysfunction, because there's both sides of the coin will have, some issues. And so let's open up those conversations and take the shame out of it.
Yeah.
Start having good sex again, right?
Yeah, it's so true. Like, it's really too bad that we have all of this stigma and shame around something that is really so natural like just a part of every one of our lives. And yet it's, it's like, don't talk about money. Well, sex is above the don't talk about money.
Like, don't say anything. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. It's not polite, but like we talk about eating, we talk about all of our other bodily functions. So why not this one? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's so interesting. So where can people find out more about your intimacy coaching and hypnosis? And also, where can they get your book?
So you can go to goodgroove.com. And that's the website and everything you need in terms of, you can apply for coaching. You can actually download the book for free at the moment. So if you go there now, you can get on our newsletter and download the book for free. So goodgroove.com.
Goodgroove.com. We'll make sure that gets put in the show notes.
Okay. Great.
Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation. Thank you very much for spending the time with me. Everybody who's listening, go check this out. Go download the book. I downloaded the book. I loved it. Like I said, it's a great conversation starter. It opened my eyes to some things where I was like, oh, this is interesting. But yeah, I mean, and let's start opening up this conversation a little bit more and get rid of the shame. And also, and you said this several times, is like, let's love on and trust our bodies.
Yes.
Right?
Say that again.
Telling us the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the wisdom of women's bodies is something I could talk about till the
it knows. They know. Our bodies know. Our bodies know. Listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
For those of you listening, if you like what you heard today, please give us a 5-star rating and review, or better yet, the biggest compliment you could give us would be to pass this episode along to a friend, your partner, a sister, anybody, so that we can start opening up this conversation and enjoy more pleasure in our lives. So Thank you, Janet.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. If you like what you heard, the greatest compliment you could give us would be to comment below and subscribe. Or better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think could get something out of it. And remember, midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply the beginning of your kick-ass next chapter.